One. Hi, this is Bruce Rawles. I'm talking today with Susan Dugan, and as always, well, almost always, I guess, we're talking about A Course in Miracles. And we thought since this is the last day of 2024, we thought we'd read the introduction to the final lessons of the workbook of A Course in Miracles, and those final lessons, number 360 through 365 or 366 in leap years, as the case may be, depending how you do that, are just so powerful and really kind of set the tone for, wrapping up the practice, but reminding us that it's just the course is just a beginning,
Right.
and it's really that process that we're initiated into and given the charge of continuing and deepening and going from hobbyist level practitioners of the mindfulness the course suggests to uh, the Olympic level, perhaps, at some
I
point.
don't know about that, but
Anyway, welcome, Susan. Thanks as always for being here.
I'm certainly not at that level.
Oh,
But
no, no, no. But that's the goal. I mean, that's
yeah,
the aspiration, right? Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Which we
Well,
will
and
all
it,
attain, right? And that, of
yeah,
course, reminds us that sooner or later we will all voluntarily be motivated to want to give that our mindset full attention. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that the practice you can read the course forever and listen to Ken forever and not and if you're not trying to really apply this in your life to everything that and that comes up that seems to be upsetting, then especially those and the things that for most of us are most upsetting are in our what the course calls our special relationships, which
Mhm.
just we just really seem to all struggle with, and we don't people as personal selves are always saying that they're looking for intimacy and they're looking for this like soulmate connection. And you know what? There is no soulmate connection between other people. There, because everybody feels that lack of not having a connection, of feeling that they're disconnected, and we're somehow sort of abused by spirit, by, the disconnection was not my fault. It was, we don't remember that this was just a deliberate decision to dream another existence. And so, we're just all really suffering. You can't try to, seek for and find what everybody, when we're looking in other personal selves that feel equally lacking. And so, but there is a connection within us all, within every mind that is, um, eternally complete and boundlessly loving and innocent and not involved with the storytelling of this world of terrible atrocities and duality, that is so difficult to navigate and survive even, as personal selves, both emotionally and physically. So that intimacy that we're really looking for is always within the mind, which where is the only place we really are, not in form. And so I think, to even approach this course requires some awareness of that lack within yourself, and
Mhm.
at least the humility to open to another way. I don't think any of us would be drawn to this course unless we had tried a lot of other ways, and found them terribly lacking. And so, and realized that the problem was somewhere in me, not in others. And the solution was somewhere in me, not in others. So I think, the after a year of working, the initial year of that the course asks us to indulge in, of the very simple workbook lessons, daily lessons, that first we just read and we try to the best of our ability as it goes on. We don't really understand it, but we try to do what it's saying, suspend our disbelief, as it talks about in the introduction to the lessons,
Mhm.
to the workbook. that we won't believe it, that some of them will find very challenging. I'm paraphrasing here, but to just, sort of suspend my need to understand or think that I know,
Mhm.
and open to a kind of forgiveness that is not of this world and is not about forgiving other bodies. It's a very loaded term for us in the world, but it's not what the course is talking about. It's talking about healing my own mind and taking, 100% responsibility for my reactions to what seems to be happening. And that's for most of us at least a lifetime's work. And, but we have these healing, holy instants, the course calls them, where we have shifts in perception, where we shift to the healed perception that's within us that we're really looking for. And when we do that, then all of our relationships, they're not fraught in that moment because we see that we're all the same and we're all, trying to find our way home. And so we can't be defensive, in that moment, at least, and that's a journey because we're very, very afraid that, that's not the way we operate in the world, and we lose our bearings completely as persons, when we are willing to go there. But increasingly, we also find that we know, and through every thread of us, that at a very deep level that's beyond, that's not of this world, that's what I've been looking for all along. And, gosh, that's worth it. It's worth this practice, which is difficult.
Mhm.
So, this is kind of these final, the introduction to the final lessons. And then the final lesson itself is really a way to go forth and try to change the purpose of our lives to a classroom of a new kind of healing and a new kind of forgiveness that has nothing to do with me as a person. Goes much deeper than that. But, but the way that I'll experience it is in a healed perception of my defensiveness and my and anger and hurt and unfair feelings of unfair treatment in my relationships, right? And especially in those ones that are long lasting and lifetime and most difficult for us to really, um, to really fully accept, because that's where we hide this guilt, this, hidden guilt over believing that we're separate. That's where we kind of bury it and need to work with it. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Ditto to everything you said. Well said, yes. And I was thinking when you mentioned intimacy and the season of love and peace and joy that we aspire to, and we keep looking for it outside. Couldn't help but think about how well my wife really loves Hallmark movies, and so this time of year she has quite a few of them on, and even if I just get it through osmosis, if nothing else, if I'm not paying attention
Secondhand
to them
Hallmark. Yeah.
directly. I can't help but think this, like, well, the idea is great. It's like, well, yeah, the peace, love, and joy, but so often the storyline is about shifting things in the world in order to make the conditions just right. Well, it of course
Right.
reminds us is we've got it all backwards. It's really the choice in our mind for the thought system that is not fighting the peace, love, and joy that's our birthright
Yeah.
that really brings about the condition, and that's the only condition is our willingness to accept that as our true identity, and then we're independent of what's happening or not happening in the world, including romantic and other types of relationships with everyone and everything. And then it's not like we totally discard what we're doing in the world. It's just we do it with a different teacher. I'm reminded of Krishnamurti's brilliant comment when someone asked him his secret, and he said, "I don't mind what happens." And I thought, well,
Right.
that's
Wouldn't that be nice?
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what we can just kind of notice how much we do mind. I mean, thinking about Ken
Right.
Wapnick's approach to things is just, that's
Yes.
really useful information. I can just like just notice how much I do mind
Right.
what happens or doesn't happen, and then use that as my moment to moment forgiveness classroom. That's
Yeah.
been
I mean,
hugely
Ken used to
helpful. Yeah,
say, in interviews that I had done with him, that when I
which
was always
wonderful.
complaining about something, and that our awareness will move us along,
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
really that looking and the the humility that comes from that willingness to question our assumptions and
Yeah.
question the false connection that we're making between the behavior of others
Hmm.
and our lack of peace and lack of feeling loved and lack of feeling whatever, feeling heard and abused and all of it. And the truth is that nothing and no one outside our mind has that power. We
Hmm.
are constantly giving that away. We're constantly becoming voluntarily mindless and helpless. And, and it's, I mean, I've done it. We all do it. I'm not, I'm not, I still
Routinely, I
do it.
think. Yeah,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
not, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be holier than thou at
No, no,
all. I
no way.
mean,
No way. Yeah.
I am, was deep in to that sort of thing and, still find it very hard. And,
Mhm.
I notice it now in myself. I notice when
Yeah.
I'm going there and it's painful. It's much more
Hmm.
painful because the awareness takes us back. The awareness begins to say, wait a minute, I mean, Ken loved, and the course itself loves Shakespeare and is so rich in its Western, philosophical and literary traditions,
Hmm.
and, is not meant to be taken literally, and biblical traditions, which it's challenging all the time,
Hmm.
in the latter case. And just really, getting us to just look and again connect, become intimate with the part of us which is there if we're willing to listen. It's not direct advice for how to manage the world, but there's a forgotten song the course talks about that's always calling to us. And you know it's calling us home. It's calling us to a place of true respite and rest and
Hmm.
safety
Hmm.
and again, a completeness that we're searching for that isn't here.
Right.
That we dreamed up leaving. And so
Dreaming
so
of exile,
I'm
huh? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think in terms of New Year's resolutions, this is New Year's Eve day, and how our purpose as my purpose as a course student is only to sort of recommit every moment, every day this year,
Hmm.
again to changing the purpose of my life and catching myself when
Hmm.
I'm going straying from that, because we will stray, until our mind is completely healed and until guilt is completely the guilt we're unaware of believing that we're separate is completely dissolved through this process. We're going to be experiencing ourselves as unfairly treated all the time, and that leads to projecting on other people, and it leads to terrible behavior in just about everyone. So, I mean, it does.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
face
Yeah.
it.
Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah.
Because we're only, we're looking at our own film. We're looking at our own nightmare, and in which we are the hero, and the beleaguered protagonist of the dream and the film, the drama, and so everything, the past, the present, the future, is all about trying to portray myself as the innocent victim. And, it's all just fiction.
Mhm.
So anyway,
The fiction of the belief in separation and
yeah.
duality and
And it's
thinking that
very
there's something
seductive.
outside ourself that
It's
can
very
make us happy.
seductive
Oh,
because it
oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
momentarily, at
Right.
least, it relieves the guilt because
Right.
we're
Right.
less guilty,
Right.
in the way we feel, if we can find someone who we believe is more guilty. You're the angry one.
Mhm.
You're the one who's attacking me. You're the one who can't let go of this. You're the all of that, right? We just carry that. You're the one who's always disturbing my peace and disrupting my day and demanding all these things of me. And so we all play that game, but it's increasingly if we're willing to look at this and practice, um, it becomes a whole lot less seductive. It becomes really toxic, and we don't want to go there. We
Mhm.
recognize that's what it is, and we're willing to jump, to take a leap of faith that there's a part of us that can set us right in that. And sometimes we have to wait a long time for that to shift, but it always does. So. Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like it's really a course in looking at the sadomasochistic thought system of the ego, seeing how perverse it is, how insane and cruel and vicious and thoughtless it is, and inconsiderate of anything that's real or true that has any real value,
And
and
it's
just
not about dismissing
right,
the
right,
feelings of myself or others at all. It's
right,
feeling,
right, right, right.
it's
Yeah.
doing, I mean, not everybody wants to do this course, and not
Oh,
everybody, the course makes no claims that it is
absolutely.
the only
Yeah, yeah,
path. It talks
yeah,
about
yeah.
itself as one of thousands of paths.
Right, right, right.
But it is a path that directly confronts the toxic behavior in our
Yes.
relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the most troubling thing for me about being a human being. And what eventually helped me find the course through trial and error. And something really spoke to me about it even before I understood it,
Hmm.
which just even intellectually, it's very sophisticated and speaks on two levels, and
Hmm.
um, alludes to at least the highest um, truth that
Yeah.
is really beyond our perception until our mind is completely healed and we're no longer identified as human beings, which is, um, for most of us, we have quite a ways to go before
Yeah.
that is the case, right? And
Yeah.
but it's portrayed, the course portrays this as a journey, and we have this part of our mind, this inner teacher, this loving presence, this home
Mm.
that's always waiting for us to just pivot in its direction, just turn away a little bit from our ego and our own neediness, and need to be right, need to be um, to be the innocent one all the time, and just sort of begin to recognize that and realize that it never leads anywhere but madness, and we don't want it anymore. Yeah.
The need machine of the ego is incessant,
Yeah.
but there's
Oh,
a
our
real
neediness.
alternative. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we feel such, we're not even aware, it's very unconscious, but we feel such lack and
Yeah.
disconnection
Right.
from our true nature, from our true self, our whole being as one with spirit, right? And so, yeah.
Another metaphor is, the kid that opens up the Christmas present and, an hour or a week or a year later when it's broken and discarded and they've also abandoned the box that it came in as well as a plaything. It's like, okay, now what? And And so I think that, when we
Right. There's never
learn to
enough. Yeah.
exactly, we start to generalize and realize, no matter what seems to go right in the world, which you could generalize to the courses, you said the word special love, it's never enough. And no matter how many things that seem to go wrong, there's always a grievance and there's always an upset because we designed it to be upsetting by choosing as Ken says, the maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. And
Yeah.
and it's crazy making, but we just have to, like you say, keep looking at it without condemning ourselves and just say,
Yeah.
okay, there's my reset button. It's always there waiting for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of a end of year reset, I suppose you could say. Should we read
Yeah.
the final lessons and the
Yeah.
introduction?
I
Yeah.
mean, this is my commitment.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all I can speak for. But,
Yeah.
I think this reflects very well what the course means by purpose, changing our
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of, again, is a summation of the workbook, which is, the necessary prerequisite of learning to live this course, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
The journey that we're on. So, sure. You want to
Well,
start?
sure. So this is final lessons introduction at the end of the workbook. Our final lessons will be left as free of words as possible. We use them but at the beginning of our practicing and only to remind us that we seek to go beyond them. Let us turn to him who leads the way, him with a capital H and who with a capital W, and make our footsteps sure. To him we leave these lessons, as to him we give our lives henceforth. For we would not return again to the belief in sin that made the world seem ugly and unsafe, attacking and destroying, dangerous in all its ways, and treacherous beyond the hope of trust and the escape from pain. And of course, the only way that we could think the world that way is by believing in the dualistic dream of separation, and that we pulled off this impossible crime that says now that everyone and everything is really out to get me. And, the ego is basically, a hallucinatory, paranoid, schizophrenic thought system.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and it may not be that way clinically, but we're all that way in terms of the course's metaphysical reminder that if we believe in that we pulled off this separation, then there's nothing outside of us that is going to make us happy. But it's also a projection of the lack of safety that we feel in our mind that, we don't, there's no way that we could possibly feel at home in a world that we made up, and we know its foundations and underpinning are fraudulent.
yep. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Um, I think too that just to point out to people if they're listening, I don't know why they would listen to this if they weren't course students, but in case somebody stumbles on it,
Well, you never know. I've actually heard a
yeah,
few positive comments, and I appreciate that.
yeah, or maybe people are
Yeah.
interested, who knows? But so this whole I just want to point out that when the course refers to it without given our gender bias at right now, where we're all very, very careful with all of our,
Oh,
and
right.
trying to be more
Pronouns and
inclusive
all that.
with
Yeah.
all of that. The
Yeah.
pronouns in the course, they're always they're male,
Yeah.
but they mean the universal male, and it's not this was written in the
60s. Yeah.
60s and 70, early 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and also that when it's not, the hymn, that this inner teacher is a symbol. It's not something
Right.
outside us. It's not really
Right.
referring to the biblical Jesus or Holy Spirit or
Right.
anything like that, although it uses those terms in
Right.
places.
And
But
redefines them wonderfully and
right, because we
extensively throughout
think
the
of
course.
things
Yeah.
in form and we
Yeah.
don't know how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
relate to the
Right.
abstract. And
Hmm.
so the journey with this course is more and more a journey that leads us more in an abstract direction where we kind of recognize again this quiet center, this loving presence that's accessible in our minds, in all of our minds. And so we're able to kind of approach that with less fear over time. But initially, it provides us with this idea of sort of an inner person that's helping us. But it's not to be taken literal. And,
Yeah.
it does that with the word God too, but it's really talking
Hmm.
about this, um, you know, undifferentiated, abstract all loving union, with love, with the capital L love, so not the special love of the world, but the all-inclusive love that doesn't recognize guilt and duality and doesn't play favorites or judge or
Make
condemn or
make
compare.
comparisons. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it is a journey of becoming more aware of that we have this other part of our mind, and there's no way out of my ego thought system through the ego, through everything I've relied on all my life. There's only a way out when I'm willing to, again, pivot away from that, recognize that's not the direction, that it's never served me to go that direction, and then, pivot toward. And that's all we have to do. We don't, just question what we're doing is enough to pivot toward and open to that capital L love, all inclusive love in our mind that will heal the guilt that we can't directly approach because we've completely repressed it.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I like your word pivot because it reminds me of the agility of the mind to instantaneously change. I was actually kind of reflecting on my dad worked in a building with a huge concrete door because he was involved with nuclear research projects and that sort of thing. And I remember him saying that the door um, that basically open and shut the main entrance where they move huge amounts of equipment, large things in and out. It was so carefully balanced that it could pivot on just a finger touch. This multi-ton door. And I was thinking, well, our minds are even more agile than that because in a split second, when we notice a twinge of pain, a twinge of annoyance, of irritation, of guilt, of any negative thought or feeling, that's our clue. It's like, oh, I've chosen the wrong teacher again. And we can
right.
pivot if we want to. It's the motivation of
An
wanting
it's
to.
the invitation, and
That's the
we've got to,
invitation. Yeah,
and a
yeah.
lot of times we don't want to accept that invitation. We want to go forth with we want to go back into the wormhole of the
Yep.
dream, into
Right.
the
Right.
nightmare,
Yep. Yep.
we want to defend ourselves,
Hmm.
ourselves, and but eventually we realize even as we're doing it, that it's not going to lead any place that I really want to go.
Exactly.
And so, we catch ourselves sooner and we're willing to take responsibility for that. And that's a huge step. So, yeah.
Way big. Want to read the
All
second
right.
paragraph?
Yeah, I will do. I know we should move it along here. His is the only way to find, so his being that loving presence in our mind is the only way to find the peace that God has given us. It is his way that everyone must travel in the end, because it is this ending God himself appointed. In the dream of time, it seems to be far off, and yet in truth, it is already over, already serving us as gracious guidance in the way to go. Let us together follow in the way that truth points out to us, and let us be the leaders of our many brothers who are seeking for the way but find it not. None of that is literal,
It
again,
is.
but
Hmm.
we have this we have this presence within us that if we are willing to change our perception, to go there, to pivot away again from where, the choice that I'm making and take responsibility for the choice that I'm making to believe that I'm unfairly treated, or however it's presenting, um, and pivot toward that healed perception, invite that healed perception, then uh, the way that we're leading is simply that all minds are included in that. No one is excluded from that, and we're not.
Hmm. Yep.
That love that we join with completes us because it doesn't exclude anyone,
Hmm.
victims or victimizers. It doesn't side with that belief that that certain people are unworthy of redemption. It has no involvement with the unreal, which is the nightmare that we're all, our private seeming nightmares that we're all having as really just part of one, you know of course, uses the term child of God, or one, one, and Ken uses the term decision-making mind, right? To remind us that this is about choice. Our mind is split between the ego and this loving presence, and we're learning more and more that, there's this sort of intermediary that is choosing between them. And, we have the power to change our mind, right? To change our, and thereby change our experience. It's not talking about having, guidance, that giving us lessons or guidance in form. It's talking about, you know, setting our mind straight. That the only thing that we all really want is to remember that we're loved and loving, and that, all of these experiences we have to the contrary, are not, are not what we want and not real ultimately. But we still have to deal with them as long as we experience them as real. And this is the way that will be the most healing, and ultimately awakening us to a truth that's beyond our understanding right now, right? That in which we are fulfilled completely.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And it's
yeah,
the two words you put together, loved and loving, I think are so important because really the inner and the outer are the same. And
right.
that reminder is that if I want to experience that feeling, that thought, I have to provide it, and the only way I can provide it is to let it flow through me because it can't come from me because I made a self that's in
Yeah,
opposition
no,
to the idea
no,
of love, and that's
yep,
the whole craziness of the ego thought system is I made up an identity that's really the antithesis of what the capital L love that the course
yep,
would say. So if I can forgive myself for that seeming miscreation and just look at it and with it is like Ken Wapnick says, a little gentle giggle and say, "Oh wow, there I go again, trying to make this dead horse work." And that's blocking that insistence of being a separate self is blocking the awareness of the self in my mind, which the Course calls the Holy Spirit, which is eternally and infinitely loving. And therefore
yep.
I experience that when I accept that love that's coming from that part of my right mind. And then automatically it just,
I become loving
expressed in the world.
because
Yeah,
there's,
yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
obstacles to being loving, which are, everything that we, all
yeah.
the false beliefs that we carry as an ego, as a separate self. are removed. You know, the
Eh,
guilt is
Yep.
removed from
Yeah.
the mind. So that's the core of it. And it's mistaken guilt over something that never happened. We are not separate. We are, you know, dreaming of exile. We are, you know, home in love, dreaming of exile. And so, you know, but in our current state, delusional state, that's very threatening. You know, most people don't want to approach that. And nor should, you know, again, there's other ways to get there. We all get there in the end, is what it's saying here, you know. And but there will it will always present whatever, you know, all paths lead back to the same awareness that we're in truth loved and loving, and that no one's excluded from that. And, you know, there's different ways of getting there. The courses is not about trying to, you know, some of the Eastern paths I've also explored, and they're wonderful. They just weren't the right paths for me.
Mhm.
And I was terrible at meditating. So I'm still
Same here.
terrible at meditating.
Me too.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, so this is something that you can practice throughout your day, throughout
Right.
your
Right.
busy life. And it's really about changing your perspective, and it gives you a practice and a process if you really want to make this your path. Um, and, you know, but again, it's not for everyone. So,
It seems like the course really suggests that at some point our life will be a complete meditation rather than a specific dedicated time or place or
right, right.
ambiance or whatever that's now okay,
because
now I'm
we're
in a
because
meditative
we're
state.
focused, and
Right,
we're,
right,
you know, on and paying attention
right, right.
to our reactions, to our own blocks to love's awareness, to the healing of my mind, which is
Yeah.
the only, you know, this is not about identifying other people's projections, although, you know, we may be aware of those that because we're very aware of them in ourselves, but it's about my reaction to their projections. And if I have any, if I have an investment in anything, you know, in terms of you know, being right, changing their mind, you know, and again, feeling, you know, somehow attacked, like I need to defend myself, hurt, unfairly treated, blah blah blah. Then, you know, then that's mine. I need to own that. That's, you know, I need help.
That ownership is huge. And if we once we bring the projection inside and then ask for Holy Spirit again for not only for help with bringing it inside, but also for healing our
Mm.
self accusation,
Yeah.
um, then we have gone through the outer and inner shields of oblivion, as the course talks about in lesson 136. And then it's like, okay, now the replacement's automatic, but I have to bring both the outer and the inner condemnation out into the light, so to speak.
hmm
Um, and
And be willing, yeah, again, be willing to admit again and again and again that I'm wrong.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so there's the growing humility. Yeah, I mean, you sort of kind of know that you're wrong all the time, which is kind of a huge relief, because
it
and that you
is. Yeah,
can't get out of it by yourself, that you have to connect with this part, you know, the loving part of your mind, because otherwise, you know, again, you're just, you know, right back into the nightmare, rooting yourself more deeply into it. And, you know, do I really want to do that again? You know?
I think I'm gonna might use that as my new definition for humility, being joyously happily wrong.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you know, the happy learner, and that's what it's
Yeah,
talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah,
section of the text.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I think we've got about 4 minutes left on the
oh
recording.
boy. Well, maybe we should read the last lesson
That's
then.
what I was thinking is the last.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
okay,
we highly recommend
yeah,
that, of course, students, that you review the introduction to the final lessons.
yes, yes.
Here's the final lesson.
Go
So,
ahead.
is
Yeah.
it okay if I read that one?
So of course, please.
In this, in the workbook, this is at the very end of the second part of the workbook, which is a more revelatory sort of um, portion of the workbook, and is what, you know, is advice for how to move forward
Mhm.
for the rest of our lives, really, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so he says, "This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace. And if I need a word to help me, he will give it to me. If I need a thought, that will he also give. And if I need but stillness and a tranquil, open mind, these are the gifts I will receive of him. He is in charge at my request, and he will hear and answer me, because he speaks for God my Father and his Holy Son." So, Yeah. It's
Very,
any
very
in
helpful,
any
isn't it?
moment
Yeah.
we can make that pivot. We can recognize that we're going in a direction we don't want to go and choose again,
Yep.
open
Yep.
again, and then be patient and humble as we experience our resistance to shifting to that healed perception and begin to forgive ourselves for that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the word direction kind of jumped out at me. It's like, well, okay, the GPS metaphor comes to mind, and I was thinking, we sort of like in the dashboard of our mind have put duct tape over all the idiot lights that the Holy Spirit, which would really just it's like if as long as you're not at peace, it's the lack of peace detector that's been flashing for eons, and we keep trying to put duct tape over it, say, no, no, things are working fine here. I've got this covered, Jesus, Holy Spirit,
We
thank you.
are captivated by the nightmare,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
really.
And
I
and
mean,
and he's just saying, pull off that
yeah,
duct tape and just when you feel the temptation to put more duct tape back on, just catch yourself and say, do I really want to cover over those thoughts? But can I instead bring them out into the light, and let Holy Spirit look at them with me?
begin to see that I'm wrong. They're really nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
We are the same.
Yep,
We're all fighting the same hard battle. We're all
exactly.
trying to heal. We're just lost until we aren't,
Yeah.
until we choose to find a better way.
And the sameness is summarized nicely in the end of chapter 15, where it ties into the Christmas the holiday season.
Yes,
Make this year different by making it all the same, making everyone the same, as you were pointing out earlier in your eloquent
practicing it in
comments.
all
Yeah,
situations. Again,
yeah,
any
yeah,
exclusions mean that you're choosing the person to defend the personal self. And how's that working out? As we always talk about, right?
exactly, exactly.
So
Well, thank you so much, Susan. Really,
thank
always
you.
always
Happy New Year,
enjoy
everybody.
the
I feel like
conversations.
2025 is going to be a great year.
Yeah. Another great classroom, all the same. Yeah,
Yeah. If we don't look at form, I think we can have that hope.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so, all
So
right.
you can visit Susan on foraysinforgiveness.com, and I'll post this on acimblog.com. And again,
Great.
thank you very much, and
Thank you, Bruce.
have a great new year, everyone, and
Bye-bye.
beyond.